Yeah. Well, that was weird. Stopped and then goes again. All right. So what I get a lot of times is people saying to me, um, I get a lot of people will say to me, they think sales training is all about how to overcome objections. Um, but wouldn't it be great if there weren't any objections? And so we use a systematic approach to manage expectations and address objections before the client even brings them up. The rule is if you have heard the objection more than 3 times, you probably need to address it first when you're talking to the new prospect. And most of you have heard these objections before. And I wanted you to make sure that you start writing down what the objections are and you create a game plan before you even go into the next conversation with something. So, again, part of our agenda today is we're going to use effective questioning strategies to ask questions because prospects can object to salespeople's statements, but not their own replies to a salesperson's questions. So that's one of the segments of today. What we're going to do today's segment is really spend some time on how to address those questions. Everybody still with me? Somebody say yes, so I know that you're with me.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. There we go. All right, so outcome. So we've talked about time we're going to spend. We've talked about the overall objective. We talked about anything else on your agenda, my agenda, and now typical outcome. So some of you are going to take the company's features and benefits that they have, and you'll learn to put them in a questioning format after today's training and help to work with the prospects so they discover the need for your product and services. And some of you really, I hope, start to adopt the upfront contract and improve your client relationship. So that's the outcome that I hope we get from today's session. So let's go back into upfront contract or managing the expectations. And I want you to think about this is when you start doing upfront contract, it's kind of like an orthodontic procedure. At the beginning, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. There's probably going to be a little bit of pain. It could take a long process, but the end result will be a beautiful smile. So if you think about learning how to do upfront contracts, it's like an orthodontic procedure, if you will. By the way, I sent everybody on my list, over 25 people. They're in the club. I sent you PDFs today, but I really haven't charged enough for like materials and stuff. So I'd like everybody to scan this QR code when you get a chance and give me a $2 participation fee to cover the cost of my PDFs that I've sent out to everybody. Now, how do you feel about that? Because if you think about it, the $2 really isn't a big issue. I think everybody can probably afford $2, but it's the fact that we didn't have an agreement for such a fee that can cause issues with people. And some of you might have reacted immediately, go, "Oh man, that's a bunch of crap. Why is he doing this?" Or "My company pays for this. Why am I going to come up with $2?" It's because we do not manage expectations sometimes with people. And when people are surprised about something that they didn't expect, that's when they kind of get upset. So that's part of the upfront contract, is to make sure that we're covering all the expectations that one has up front. So a contract, remember, a contract is an agreement between two or more parties, especially one that's written down. It says, I will do this if you do that. So I encourage you to be taking notes throughout a meeting with somebody. And at the beginning, one should say, hey, do you mind if I take notes? I've never had anybody say no, but you're asking permission. Again, one of my rules is people can't get mad at you for doing something they gave you permission to do. So remember to ask, hey, do you mind if I take notes? Because if you're going through your upfront contract and you're taking notes, subliminally, it kind of to that prospect is you've written this down and they've agreed to the elements of your upfront contract. So if you aren't the type of person that takes notes, start, if you will, it holds the prospect accountable for the behavior that you want. And again, just think of the upfront contract as kind of like the ground rules. Before every game, the managers, umpires go behind home plate and they go over the ground rules. So there's no mutual mystification about what a ground rule double is or what a runner interference. They go over the ground rules. So before the first, or at least by the second call, before you show them anything, before you do any demonstrations or try and solve problems, manage the expectations up front about how a meeting or a conversation is going to go. Because if you
Can I
think about
interrupt
it,
with a question?
go right ahead.
With note taking, what do you feel about asking people if you can record it with an app that transcribes? I've got terrible handwriting, and for me to listen to people and write notes is really.
That's a good question. I haven't really had anybody ask me that. How do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable asking, or you actually
No,
have
I
asked
I
people?
typically just explain to people that, do you mind if I record this? I've got an app that will transcribe it. For me to listen to you and take notes is I've proven to be difficult. I'd rather give you my full attention, and my app will take the notes for me.
And then how do you, and then the reaction has been,
People are typically fine with that.
I would think so. Yeah. Again, what you're doing is you're following the rule. I said is, people can't get mad at you for doing something they gave you permission to do. And I think your explanation of why you're doing it helps them feel a little bit more at ease that you're not going to use it against them. You're using it because it's, yeah, I think that's great. Anybody got any other comments? I think it's great that you do and ask permission as opposed to just having a tape recorder sitting in front of them or a dictaphone, if you will. Okay.
I would say I've had a lot of success at just asking that same thing. Do you mind if I, blah, 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 whatever that is. Do you mind if I, ask you about this but even just phrasing those things, I get such an easier feedback by asking for permission for them to, do that versus just, like as an example saying, who else are you talking to? Or, hey, would you mind sharing with me who else you've contacted? And it's been a big difference on how they respond. So.
Good. Well, that makes sense. But here's the problem that we have, all of us sometimes. Think about it. Selling is really the only major profession where we start giving away our free consulting. And so, what I want you to understand about when we talk about managing the expectations and doing an agreement up front about how a meeting's going to go, what we're trying to do is basically find out what this person's going to do with this information we're going to give them. The commitment, again, is whether we want them to say yes at the end, no, this doesn't make sense, or at least a clearly defined next step. So we're setting it up front, asking permission, just like Mark and you guys are talking about. We're giving them the opportunity to agree that it's okay to move forward with them. So if you've heard me use the phrase "stop spilling your candy in the lobby," I have to remember that sometimes it's an older reference lost on younger people. It used to be Saturday matinees where you could go watch 2 movies in a row at the theater, and the idea is you don't spill all your candy in the lobby before you go watch the main feature. So if the analogy I'm using is, do we spill all our consulting and try and give up all of our free consulting before we even find out whether the prospect would even buy the solutions that we're talking about? So the upfront contract is designed to get the client to understand that, hey, at the end, there's going to be an opportunity for you to say, yes, that'd be great. I'm also okay with you telling me no. But if it's not a yes or no, can at least we have a clearly defined next step? Because the 5 elements of the upfront contract is the objective. Hey, what's the overall objective? And the reason I bring this up so much is because sometimes when I'm doing a group training, when I've got 30 salespeople in a room and I'm doing a company, I'll also point out and I'll ask somebody, hey, has anybody got an appointment up with a new appointment, a prospect appointment scheduled in the next couple of days? There'll always be one person will raise their hand and say, yeah, I've got an appointment. I said, okay, what are you going there for? What's the objective? And the salesperson will say, well, I'm going there to sell them. And I go, okay, what do you think the prospects thinks you're coming? Oh, to give me free consulting or to learn about my price. So we're not on the same page many times. So the 5 elements of the contract start with overall, what's the objective of the meeting? And just understand, sometimes the first meeting is only for bonding and rapport. Get to know each other. And that could be, but we should be clear about that. All right. What else is on their objective? Because the first time when you ask somebody, hey, what's the objective of today's meeting? It's typically going to be, well, I just want to get your price. And that makes sense. I appreciate it. Anything else other than price, what do we need to make sure we talk about? And then your objective, what it is that you want to go over. All right. And then time, how much time do we have? Please honor people's times as far as, hey, we set this up 45 minutes. That's still good. And then when we get done, it's either yes, no, or clearly defined next step. Make sure you cover the 5 elements. And again, I put that in the handout that I sent you so that you can remember it. Don't have to come back to this PowerPoint or the video. Just have it in front of you what the elements of an upfront contract are. And don't be so concerned. Go ahead, Jenna.
Can you clarify the difference between the first objective and the third objective?
Okay, so the objective typically, what's the meeting was scheduled for? The meeting was just for a conversation about a website site development. All right. Yeah, but let's be a little bit more specific. What else is on their agenda? What else is their objective? What else do they need to have a conversation about? Maybe they want to talk about you creating a PDF or some other type of literature for them. And then we'll get into a little bit more about what your objective is. What is that you need out of this meeting to move forward? So again, the objective overall, anything else they want to talk about, what you need out of this meeting to be able to give them the things that they asked about, how much time is this going to take, and possible outcomes when we get done, yes, no, or clearly defined next step. The reason we want to spend a lot of time on the third or the last thing is when we get done, most of you, your first calls typically aren't first call sales. So you say that, hey, most times the first meeting we're going to have typically isn't, I'm walking out here with a contract, but it could be a no. It might not be a yes when we get done, but I'm okay at any time during the next 45 minutes. If you decide there's not a fit, I'm okay with you telling me no. And when we get done, if it's not a yes or a no, other than a think it over, would it make sense that we just schedule another meeting if it's not a yes and it's not a no, so that you're getting an agreement up front about how this meeting's going to end? And many times I use that phrase. I even say, hey, how much time do we have? I start with time. Right after the bottom report, I say, when we set this up, you said 45 minutes. Is that still good? Great. And so when I walk out of here at 11:45, this will be a great meeting. If what do we need to accomplish overall in the next 45 minutes for you to say this was a great meeting? Then they give me their objective. And then they'll give me anything else on your agenda, anything else you'd like to talk about here other than price or delivery, anything else you'd like to talk about. Do you mind if I share with you what the things I need out of today's meeting? I fully need to understand the scope of your project. I need to understand some of your time commitments. I really need to understand some of the challenges and issues you're hoping that I can solve. Because wouldn't it make sense that if I fully understand the scope of the project, the time limits, some of the real challenges you're facing, who else might even be involved in the decision-making process, that I can do a much better job at fulfillment if I understand those things. So today we're going to have to talk about, challenges you're facing, the budget you're willing to spend. And I do that in the upfront contract so that I'm not fighting off at the end. So what do you charge for this? Well, we already had that conversation. I still need to get this information before I can give you that price. So don't be so concerned as far as the order. I just like to start with time because I've just gotten into that habit that how much time, because I don't care if we set a meeting for an hour and then I get there and they try and they want to circumvent that by just getting to the price and say, oh, I forgot I got to pick up my kids at soccer practice. You only got 15 minutes. Then I go, well, what do you hope we can really accomplish in 15 minutes? And they'll start to realize that, well, I just want to get your price. Anything else you want to get, go right into the upfront contract. You realize that might take more than 15 minutes for me to really ask you the questions. It helps them understand that you probably can't do what you need to do in 15 minutes. Yeah, you can give them their price, but you can't really understand the issues or challenges they're really facing that way. So that's why I follow a systematic approach to managing those objections. And it always starts with, again, thanks for inviting me in. And I want you to use the word invite. Thanks for inviting me in. This focus groups have found that invite is a better word. Thanks for allowing me a few minutes of your time. Don't be subservient. Thanks for inviting me in, or thanks for coming by the office. How much time have we set aside for today's meeting? Agenda. Do you mind sharing with me what you're hoping to accomplish during our meeting today? Do you mind sharing with me what you're hoping to accomplish during the next time frame between now and the next meeting? And typically, most people have had a conversation. This is definitely for those of you who are doing with husbands and wives or partners. Typically, most people have a conversation with each other about what they were hoping to accomplish during the meeting. You mind catching me up to speed with what you guys talked about before I came over, what you were hoping for? It helps get the little bit more detail, because if you think about it, those of you who go meet like in somebody's home and selling in some homeowners at their house, the husband and wife or the spouse, the partner, they've had a conversation about what they want to get out of the meeting. And when you do it, just like, hey, just mind catching me up to speed. It's amazing how you get a little bit more information from these people by using that phrase. So again, one of the techniques, acronyms, what I want you to use is ANOT. It's called ANOT. Naturally, obviously, typically. Thanks for inviting me in. How much time do we have? Naturally, you're going to have some questions about who I am, what we do. Obviously, I'm going to need to ask you a lot of questions about what you're hoping for, what you're looking for. That's why I want to get a little bit more understanding about what your agenda is. And typically, when we get done, and again, you go into typically when most first call meetings that we have aren't, I'm not going to walk out of here with a check, take the pressure off, but I'm going to walk out of here with a little bit more information. If I do walk out of here and we find that there's not a fit on either end, I'm okay with you telling me no. I hope you're going to be okay if I tell you no. And if it's not a yes or no, the worst case scenario would make sense. We'd probably schedule another meeting. Remember, we're using their system. Remember, their system was to mislead about their true intentions. First base, second base, steal all your free consulting. Third base, commit to nothing, and then run home and hide. By saying typically when we get done, it's not a yes the first time, but it could be a no. They think that you might tell them no, and they won't get all your free consulting. So they will agree to this upfront contract. When we get done, it's either yes, this makes sense, no, this doesn't make sense, or the worst case scenario, I'm here, you're here, we both got our calendars, we would schedule another meeting. And that's why you do the typically like this upfront contract. I also have an acronym I use called TACO. And the reason I started doing TACO is if you jump in, remember, you're going to go from what most salespeople do. Step one is bond report. Almost every salesperson, hot enough for you. What about the Packer game you saw the weekend? Whatever it is, everybody does the warm up. But if you jump right into, oh, let's do an upfront contract, it's not what they're used to. So there's usually, hey, do you mind if I just thought maybe we should have a mini agenda on how this meeting should go. So again, thanks for inviting me in. Let's set the agenda for what we're going to have a conversation about. I'm probably going to ask you a lot more questions than my competitors will. And I hope it doesn't become annoying. But I didn't walk in here with a preconceived notion of what it is that I'm trying to sell you. I'm really going to ask you a lot of questions about what it is you're hoping to get to, what your budgetary restrictions might be. And when we get done, again, it would certainly be great if it's a yes, but I'm okay if it's a no. And if it's not a yes or no, at least a clear to define next step would be what I'd be looking for. So that's the old spelling of TACO is thanks for inviting me in. What would be on your agenda? I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, and the likely outcome is this. So it's just an acronym. I'm trying to help you remember to do the steps in the upfront contract. So again, use your agenda to address any objections. So remember the third element that Janelle pointed out. First is time, then their objective and agenda, then your agenda. So it might be something like this. Your agenda might be, hey, Mr. Prospect, before I called you or before I came over, I was thinking about some reasons why we might not end up doing business together. You mind if we have a conversation about what those might be and just get it out of the way? And I'll give you a great example if I did this. A lawyer called me one time. He's one of these accident lawyers that you see advertised on the TV during daytime hours or whatever. And he called me and said, hey, I heard about your sales training. Can you come over and have a conversation? I want to hire you for do some sales training. So when I got there, I said, hey, I'm just curious, before we even get started, you mind if we have a conversation about why we might not end up even doing business together? And he goes, well, that's odd, but yeah, go ahead. And I said, well, I'm not a lawyer. I don't really know anything about law. I flunked out of my first year in constitutional law. But I mean, why would you even hire a salesperson instead of a lawyer or a practice building seminar? Why would you even want to talk to a sales trainer? He says, because I hire 5 new associates every year right out of law school. We start them at about $60,000. And you think I'm going to hand those people cases right away? They have to go out and find cases. So they actually have to learn how to be salespeople first. So I'm interested in hiring you for sales training. I said, okay, well, that's a good reason. One of the things we're going to do is any training that I do is probably going to consist of ongoing reinforcement training. You're probably going to tell me that you just want to do a 2-day boot camp, try and teach your new attorneys sales, and then leave it at that. But anything I do is going to need some ongoing reinforcement. You think after them going to law school for a couple of years, a 2-day boot camp in sales is going to teach them how to sell? you're probably going to tell me they're too busy. If I say, hey, we're going to need to do ongoing reinforcement training at least an hour a week, you're probably going to tell me you don't have time. By God, if I pay the money, they'll be there. If I tell them to be there, they'll be there. Okay, so you have an objection could get to later about time. As well, money wise, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for cheap sales training, there's probably not a fit. And when you and your partners did your budget for the year, I doubt if there's a line item like line item number 6 in your budget that says sales training. You're probably going to tell me you didn't budget for it. He says, no. Here's the deal. We hire 5 every year. I'm thinking I'll only hire 4 this year and save the 60,000. Oh, I just told you what my budget is. So sometimes if you talk to somebody about why you might not do business early in the process, remember, this is only a second step in the sales process, they will overcome the objection because they want to see your stuff. Remember, we're using their system against them. They want to get all your free consulting. They want to know what it is that you know, and they want it for free. So sometimes come up with the objections that you've heard of already, and they will try and defend them so that they get your stuff. So that's one of the things I do under my agenda is address objections before they even come up. So something like, hey, you've been with the same supplier for years. You're probably very loyal to them. Is that going to stop us from considering our offering? And let them say, well, no, we've been with them for years, but they feel like they've taken advantage of us or they're taking us for granted. Okay. And we might have a superior product, but we're not the lowest price. Is price paramount? Is this only a price-driven transaction? If so, this might not be a fit for us. And let them say, oh, God, no, price, I want a reasonable price. I understand that, but no, I'm not looking for the cheapest. And are there any other advanced objections that you could bring up? So again, I'm trying to show you what you might bring up as your agenda items is to cover the objections before the client even brings them up. So overcoming objections to making the upfront contracts, why some salespeople won't do this step in the system. Because sometimes you're uncomfortable making upfront contracts because it sounds like it might be too pushy, that you're already upfront asking for either a yes or a no or a clearly defined next step. So build up your comfort level by practicing making upfront contracts with family members or current customers, or you just forget to do it, that you're get into the old habits of just meeting with somebody, warm up, present. Remind yourself to make upfront contracts by keeping a reminder note near your phone if you're making a phone call or using the system. For example, every time you begin discussing the date and the time of the meeting with prospect, complete the entire upfront contract, all the other elements that we talked about of the total 5. Sometimes people don't do the upfront contract because they don't want to do all the elements of it. They're afraid to do the yes, no, or their clearly defined next step. Remember, people fall in love with you when you show them where the exit ramp is. Early in the process, you tell somebody, hey, if there's not a fit, I'm okay with you telling me no. It takes the pressure off them because if you say to them, hey, be great if it's a yes, but I understand it's probably not going to be the first call close. So I'm okay with a no if there's not a fit. All right. They'll fall in love with you when you show them where the exit ramp is. So the clients actually really like the upfront contract. You might be reluctant to talk about some subjects like the pain, the budget, referrals, et cetera. So early in the process, you might share with somebody, hey, you mind if I share with you my biggest fear? My biggest fear is that we stall when we talk about budget. So we're going to talk about budget and your expectations early in the process. I hope that's okay. Because most people think that it's the other way around, that you're going to make a presentation, tell them what the budget is, and then they could tell you whether it fits or not. We want to get an idea of their expectation. We're not asking for the exact dollar amount that they're going to commit to. We're just trying to get an expectation in the budget step. So again, manage those objections, the expectations, time, objective, the client's agenda, your agenda, likely outcome, and remember not. Appreciate, naturally, obviously, typically. Hey, I appreciate you inviting me in. How much time do you have? Naturally, you're going to have some questions about who we are and what we do. Obviously, I'm going to have some questions for you. Typically, when we get done, it's going to be a yes, no, or clearly defined next step. So that's why I want you to use the acronym not. Appreciate, naturally, obviously, typically. All right. Questions on the upfront contract before we move on to the next segment of our presentation here. Comments, questions on upfront contract before we move into features and benefits.
What about the client who wants to just barrel through and doesn't want to answer the questions of all of those different things, time, etc.
And what do they want to barrel to? They just want to get to the price?
Maybe not necessarily the price, that just, because what we felt is that we get through like 3 of them and then the conversation changes and we never get back to what's the next steps at the end of the project.
So one of the things that I do sometimes if I've got a client like that is I actually write it down and show them what my system is. You know, I think sometimes as those of us that even don't want to call ourselves salespeople, as salespeople, what we're afraid to do is tell people what we're going to do. So write it down. Show them, hey, first thing we're going to do is obviously people buy from people like us. There's a little bit of bond and rapport. Then I'm going to just write down, we're going to decide what the agenda for today's meeting is. Somewhere I'm going to have to talk about, you know, some of the challenges and issues that you have. So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. It's actually the pain step you're getting. I don't use the pain in front of the client, but reasons to do business. Somewhere we're going to have to talk about budget, you know, but before we talk about budget, we're also going to have to talk about, you know, your decision-making process, how you're going to about making decisions. But once I fully understand your decision-making process, your budgetary restrictions, challenges that you hope I can solve, then I can do a better job. Step number 6 at fulfillment. So that I'm telling them I'm not getting to the fulfillment until I have these other steps clearly defined. Deborah, does that make sense that you're trying to make sure they see where you're at? It's kind of like going into these meetings without an agenda. Would you ever have a meeting, you know, with the Chamber of Commerce or the local city council without an agenda so that somebody can point ahead? We'll get to that. Write it down and show them what your system is. Have you ever done that, by the way?
I don't think we have with this.
There's nothing wrong with telling what your system is. This isn't the secret that Oprah was talking about years ago. This isn't a secret. Tell them, hey, this is our system. I fully understand to see if you even qualify. I got to understand reasons to do business. I got fully got to understand your budgetary restrictions. I need to understand your decision-making process. And once I do that, then I can get to fulfillment so that you can go back and point to that. And I'll write it down on a napkin sometimes, almost like a baseball diagram. And I'll sit there and if they start to get ahead of me, I just point to the, you know, hey, we'll get to that. I still haven't got I can't really give you a price until I fully understand this, this, and this. That's my suggestion. I don't know if it fits, but
Okay.
That's how I do it.
I will try it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with showing them what your system is right up front. All right. Anything
So,
else on that?
Yeah, when you talk about budget, I get uncomfortable asking what their budget is because I feel like they're gonna think I'm just gonna base my price on what their budget is.
All right. So the rule is if you feel it, say it. So you say it to them. Say, hey, do you mind if I share with you? When we talk about budget, one of the things is you're uncomfortable because mama taught you don't talk about money. It's impolite to talk about money. We have been conditioned from childhood not to talk about money. And it's much easier to just go ahead and do your benefits and features and show them all your wonderful things and then tell them what it's going to cost after that. But it doesn't matter what you charge, Janelle. It matters what the client expects to pay. So you can share with them, say, hey, it's really uncomfortable for me to talk about money, but wouldn't it be fair to understand to say that, hey, I need to get an understanding what you're comfortable with. And I'm not, and that's why I use the phrase in round numbers. You mind sharing with me in round numbers what you were expecting it was going to take to design a website? We're not asking for the final number here. We're just trying to get their expectation. Does that help at all?
Little bit.
A little bit.
Still uncomfortable.
Tell them in this story then. Why are you uncomfortable about talking about money? Because you're afraid that if they tell you that they have 5,000 and you would have done it for 3, that you're going to raise the price to 4,999?
Yeah.
Well, then tell
Basically,
them
I
that.
feel like they're gonna think no matter what price I give them, that they're gonna think that I'm
And you're not that type of
ballooning
person,
my
right?
what?
You're not that type of person. You wouldn't do that, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
Exactly. So
But they don't know that.
but that's why the bond and rapport is important, because you are bonding with them when you share that kind of story with somebody. You mind if I share with you why I'm comfortable talking about money? I'm afraid you're just going to think that if you give me a budget. So, you're bonding with people. People like and trust you, and they like and trust you when you're vulnerable. When you show them vulnerable, you mind if I share with you why I'm a little uncomfortable talking about money? And they'll walk you through it and they'll, no, you don't need to feel uncomfortable. So you've had this conversation with me multiple times. I know that. So it
Yeah.
might be something you and I need to role play
Right.
A little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Anybody else before we move on to features and benefits?
I think the only thing that came to my mind about what Janelle was just talking about is kind of beating him to the punch on that to say, you know, before we talk about this, it's probably more than you anticipated. Because you've said that in a way, Wayne, before that, you know, I forget exactly how you say it, but that's what I kind of get to is when I ask somebody is the budget, I'm like, it's probably going to be much more than you anticipate.
Right.
And I say that so early on that by the time that it actually gets to it, I feel like we've broken the ice a bit onto that. So
Yeah, that's when people say, so what do you charge for sales training? Well, that's a hard answer. I mean, are you talking about a day-long training, an ongoing reinforcement? What are you talking about? So I don't need to answer. What do you charge for sales training? Probably more than you were expecting. Why? What were you expecting? I want to know what they were expecting. And now the number might be, excuse me, the number might be wrong. It might be way off base, but it's a starting point. That's why I do it that way. And I think that's what you've heard me say in the past, Mark, probably saying it that way. Probably more than you were expecting. Anything else?
So after they give, like, say they give, you know, what were you expecting? Oh, I was expecting, you know, $1,000. So
Interesting number.
so
How'd you come
then
up with that?
what if that's way lower than what?
Well, again, the first question is whatever number they give you, it's interesting number. How did you come up with that?
Okay.
Did they already talk to somebody else? Did they get a price from somebody else? Again, they might not know what you charge for your product or service, but they know what they wouldn't spend. And so if they come with $1,000, then you can come back very nurturing and say, well, I'm interested in how you came up with that number. And then they tell you, well, I talked to somebody else already. Anything you think they're missing, anything they did. And now at least you can have a conversation and you start it in control as opposed to you give them a number. I mean, because if you do give them a number and say it's $5,000 and they were only thinking 1,000, you're done. They're going to say, well, they're going to steal all your free consulting, but they're already thinking, oh, I'm not going to spend $5,000. So try and just start the conversation, not an interrogation. Just how did you come up with that interesting number? How'd you come up with $1,000? Suppose it's more than that. Suppose it ends up being closer to 5. Are we done right away? And if you follow that system, what's happening is you're finding out if they qualify or not, because that's what the whole system is about. If they don't have the money to fix the problem, you can't control their pocketbook.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Features and benefits. So remember, we were all taught to read from left to right. So most of us have thought that way. So what we do is we start presenting our feature. We've been in business since 1960. All right. And if you think about that, okay, why is that a benefit to the customer? What client issue does it fix that you've been in business since 1960? What I want you to think about is how can you put it into a question format, your feature, and you go from right to left instead of left to right. So that's why I sent you this piece of paper so that you can start asking questions instead of just trying to convince somebody about your feature of benefit. And that's the problem with most sales. Most sales is about taking the feature and trying to convince somebody that's a benefit and hope that the client realizes that because you've been in business for over 50 years, that credibility gives you credibility. But really, you haven't even had a conversation about why that even fixes an issue that the client has. So remember, any reason the client buys from you is because they want the product to be quick, they want it to be right, they want it to be cheap, they want it to be easy, or they want it to be personalized. So remember, every client, every solution is 1, 2, 3, or all 5 of these. Quick, right, easy, cheap, personalized. So that's what your client's looking for is a solution, whatever their pain is. Quick, right, easy, and personalized. So on this form that I've given you, what I want you to do is start thinking about it that way. And you start putting in a question, what problems or what prevents you from doing this? What difficulties do you have that would lead back to why the feature that you have is a benefit to them? So the form is here, and I'm going to give you some examples of how some other clients have used it. All right. So know your competition. Remember, General Patton said the biggest failure of a leader is the failure to understand his opponent. Patton read everything that Rommel wrote about warfare. Thus, he was able to beat Rommel in North Africa. So same thing, understand your competition so that you can put things in a question to see if your product or service exceeds the expectations that your client might have of your competition. So let's look at some companies, and these are all promotional businesses that I've worked with that put on their websites different Mark's Mailing for P&N Promotions, Rick Warrenberg of Eagle Mountain, and Bart Boney of Olive Promotions. These are some things that they put in. So Mark had this. It says, P&M Promotions, Mark's Mailing is worked in marketing, promotions, and management for over 30 years. That's his feature that he put as one of his bullet points. This proven track record of marketing ingenuity and creativeness for firms of all sizes will Mark to provide you with valuable insights and suggestions. Now, remember, those two things just hang as a dangling participle almost on his website that just points at. Well, what issue is he trying to fix? Well, he hopes the client realizes that the client perhaps is understaffed and doesn't have their own creative department. They're not big enough to be able to do their own things that he can do. But what he should do is put on his website a question: are you worried that your overworked staff is having trouble coming up with creative branding solutions? If you ask that somebody a question like that, then you can come up there and say, well, I've worked in promotions for over 30 years, right? We have marketing and ingenuity and creativeness that allows me to work with all firms. So again, I'm trying to get you to understand, put your feature or benefit. Features and benefits are important, but put it in a question format so the client says, yes, that I have that issue, that's a problem, and it's great that you can solve that for me. So let's give another one. Mark has a wide spectrum of working experience spanning multinational companies such as Strauss, all the way through running his own advertising and promotions gear image gear company. All right, so that's his feature. All right. Now, the benefit he's hoping is the clients realize that they're working with somebody that has credibility. Now, one of his clients actually came back and said, well, if you're so great, why did you start your own promotional company? Why weren't you still working somewhere else? It just got him off on tangent on something else. This feature and benefit is trying to get the client to say the client won't waste money, time, and resources with somebody that's attending his first rodeo. So the way you can put it in a question would be like this: are you concerned while engaged with an experienced vendor might save you some money, it will cost you the creativity and credibility that Season Pro will provide? That can get the client to thinking about it. So instead of just listing your benefit and feature as a, reason that somebody would buy from you, kind of asking a question format that helps them discover that they need your product or service. Mark's specialties include silk sprinting, embroidery, brand identification, domestic and offshore sourcing. Okay, domestic and offshore sourcing. So what's the benefit? Well, the client only has to deal with one vendor for all their apparel gifts, national and international needs. All right, so again, all these features and benefits, what issue? Remember, people buy solutions or problem. What issue does this have for somebody? Well, perhaps the client's regional, divisional, or local offices are dealing with several promotional vendors, and it creates copyright, logo, or additional setup charges. And by the way, this example was with Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson was, they have their own promotional company that they want all their local dealers to buy keychains from and all the things that they're at their rallies. But what happens is a lot of the local guys, they will work with a local printer to print up, T-shirts, hats, and everything, and they're violating copyright, or they're not staying uniform in their new logos and that kind of stuff. So Harley Davidson would rather work with only one national vendor to supply all of their apparel gifts and international needs so that they're all following the same logos and graphics. So what if we put it in a question format? Are you concerned that separate relationships with vendors for different promotional products may stretch your department's budgets to the seam, and is lack of control between offices harming continuity of your branding efforts? That gets a conversation started. Then you can come back and do your features and benefit and how you solve that problem. Eagle Mountain Promotions, Rick Ornbord, he's a part-time firefighter. When he's not doing firefighting, he works out of his basement, does promotional benefits, okay? And he talks about, he actually put it in his website, with us, promotional products are not a sideline. But if you went and looked at his LinkedIn profile, that would contradict what he actually says on his promotional website, because LinkedIn profile shows that he's a firefighter. So in one thing, he's saying promotional products aren't a sideline, when yes, they are, because he's a firefighter for 2 days out of the week. Our job is to draw from nearly 3,000 suppliers, which should be enough supplies in our database, selecting the right product and service for you. Okay, it just hangs there again. What issue does that solve for the client? Well, he's trying to say that we save you time to run your core business or your service, because I can do all the researching for you instead of you have to go online. Well, why does he put it in a question format? Are you worried that you're spending valuable time and resources away from your core business? Could the development, design, and creative energy you or your team is spending on branding and promotional projects be put to better use in your core competencies? If you haven't figured out what I'm doing here on the questions, we're using emotional words. Remember, people buy emotionally. Are you worried, concerned, frustrated, bothered? In your feature, take your feature, put it in a question format. Now watch what Bart does. Bart was one of my clients who's done a really great job, and this is actually in his website. We're the experts to find you the right promotional products. Really nothing different than the other two we just talked about, promotional companies. We save your most valuable asset, your time, and do the research for you. We guarantee that you'll get exactly what you ordered on time or your money back. The issue, the client has spent time in the past and budget resources on promotional products and didn't get them on time or correct. That's a real pain. So he actually has on the website, are you worried that you'll spend your limited resources on an untested product or with an inexperienced vendor? Would teaming up with an expert in the product promotion help alleviate those fears? That's actually posted on his website, and see how well that works to get the client to realize that they need his feature or benefit. Our job is to put your company name on lights or on a mug, a backpack, potpourri of thousands of things. You name it, and there's a very good chance we can put your name on it. And we'll do it in a way that's fun, creative, cost-effective, and distinctive. What issue did that solve for the client? Quick, right, easy, cheap, or personalized? Again, Olive Promotions provides personalized products and services that will save you time. So he's hitting both C, cheap and personalized, inexpensive and personalized. Now, how do you put it in his website in a question format? Is it a challenge for you to find creative and cost-effective branding methods that are fun and distinctive at the same time? By asking a question, it gets the client to think about what is the feature benefit that he might have that somebody else doesn't offer. National Premium. National Premium is the top 50 distributors. And by the way, out of product promotions, drink it or trash, or whatever you want to call it, there's over 30,000 vendors who offer product promotions. Half of them are mom and pops that work out of their basement, but there's some large ones. National Premium was one of the top 50. Their clients were like Snap-on Tools, Miller Brewing, that kind of stuff. With over 24,000 premium available to you, isn't it great to know that a top 50 national company is a large and trusted player? Again, it just hangs there if you don't sit there and talk about, well, what problems that really fix? And the issue might be the client's not saddled with a small vendor who doesn't have a bankroll to really behind National Premium to buy, ship products with ease. They're not big enough where they are. So that's what their feature was, that we're a big enough company that we can get your product or service shipped quickly because we have these national accounts. So then again, in the question format, what concerns do you have with working with a premium vendor at the opposite end of the size spectrum, as opposed to working with somebody like National Premium? So that's the question that they put on their website to get people realize that, yeah, working with a top 50 distributor is better than working with one of the mom and pop shops out of their basement. So they used to have on their website, founded in 1967. The benefit is we have a history of over 40 years of stability and experience. What problem does it fix is what we have to really sit there. What problem does have that feature have? So what I want you to think about is, I sent you all this blank paper. I want you to start thinking about, what is the feature that you already have listed on bullet point when your brochure is on your website? Okay, why is that feature a benefit to the customer? What problem does that fix for them that is either quick, right, easy, cheap, or personalized? And then how could you put it into a question format that emotional? What would, what would prevent you from? What difficulties are there? What challenge do you have? Try and put your features and benefits in a question format that helps the client discover that they need your product or service. All right. Does that help you at all as far as going from right to left instead of left from right? Because sales is difficult when we think, I got to convince this person that my feature or benefit is going to help them. Go from the question to the problem to the benefit to the feature that way. Comments? Questions? Nobody?
Tell us the QRCEP again.
Everybody wants 1, 2, 3, or all 5. They want it either. They want your product to be quick, solve a problem they have right away. They want it to be right. And some people, when we talk about, I ask them what Q means, they think quality, but that falls under right. So they want it to be quick. They want it to be right. They want it to be cheap. They want the price to be inexpensive, but I use the word cheap. All right. All right. And then they want it to be quick, right, easy, cheap, personalized. Quick, right, easy, cheap, and personalized. So here's how I do that, Deborah. In the upfront contract, I'll say, hey, under my agenda, do you mind if I share with you why most people buy from me? I mean, if you're looking for a cheap solution, probably not a fit. Okay. If you're looking for sales training to be quick, probably not a fit. Most people hire me because they're looking for the right sales training, personalized to their needs. All right. Does that differ from what you'd be looking for? Quick, right, easy, cheap. Oh, and they want it easy. Most people are looking for the right solution. They want it personalized to their needs. They want the process to be easy. They want me to conduct the training. They want everything to be sent to them. And the last thing my clients want is cheap, personalized, or cheap, quick training. By doing that, it gets me off of the price. It would be like in your world, most people buy our remodeling services because they're looking for the right designs. They're looking for the right solution. All right. They're looking for it to be personalized specifically to them. They're not looking for a rubber stamp CAD design that they can go to Home Depot and get. All right. Right. Isn't that the 2 reasons why most people buy from you?
Yeah, we want personalized and custom to them.
Right. And are they looking for an easy solution? They're looking for us to order and do the permitting. They're looking for us to get all the permission with the city. Yep. So those are the top 3 reasons people buy from us. And most people aren't buying from us because they're looking for a cheap, quick solution. As a matter of fact, we're scheduling all the way out to April already. So if you're just looking for a quick, cheap solution, probably not a fit. If you're going to be turning this house over, you just want to get a basement and add a basement, bedroom, and a bath so you can list it and sell it tomorrow, and you're not worried about the quality, you're not worried about that, we're probably not the company for you. And remember, you're doing this in your upfront contract. This is under your part of the agenda in the upfront contract. Because now and that's why I use the quick, right, easy, cheap, personalized. A lot of people criticize me. Oh, don't use cheap, use inexpensive. I want to use cheap because I want to say to them, most people aren't hiring me because they're looking for cheap training. And they go, oh God, we're not either. I never have to argue with price over that. Because if I cover that up front, then I get to the budget and I say, so this is a problem. Your salespeople aren't prospecting enough. This is a problem. Your closing ratio is not as high as you like. You're not looking for cheap training. You've told me that already. You mind sharing with me in round numbers what it's going to take to provide the training you need to be able to get your salespeople in more prospecting mode, to get your salespeople more closing opportunities? You mind sharing with me in round numbers what you were thinking was going to take to fix these problems? You see, I don't have to argue about price anymore. Because now if you give me a low ball price, I'll say, well, I'm confused. You told me you weren't looking for cheap training. $1,000. Do you really think, because if I did my pain step right, what is this problem costing them? That their sales numbers aren't where they should be, that their closing rate isn't as high as, they'll come up and say, well, I think it's $100,000 problem. And then when I say, you mind share with me in round numbers what you think is going to take to fix this problem? $1,000. Really? You think $1,000 is going to fix a $100,000 problem? Remember at the beginning, we had a conversation that it's okay for me to tell you no. Are you okay with me telling you it's probably not a fit? So that's why it all starts, all these steps start fitting together. Quick, right, easy, cheap, personalized.
Okay,
I
makes
think
sense.
everybody should do that. If you think about what are the top reasons why people buy your product or service, I'll guarantee you're not the low price entry level consumer or product provider in your marketplace. Remember, think of a triangle, and look at my triangle up here on the board. All right, every business model is either price, quality, or service. And sometimes I'll take my shoestring out of my shoes and I'll put it up there and I'll stretch them from one tip to another. There's no business model where you can be the low price, best quality, best service. You'll be out of business in 6 months. So your business model is probably offer exceptional service, all right, good quality at an affordable price. And when you show that to somebody, say, what's your business model? Because they can't have all three. There's no business model where you can be the lowest price, best quality, best service. It's kind of like McDonald's. If McDonald's, of those three, what is McDonald's going to? Service and price, not quality, right? Because if McDonald's says we're going to start selling Omaha quality steaks, what's going to suffer? Probably not going to be able to deliver it through the takeout window. Probably not going to be able to do it at, $3 Happy Meal price. So price, quality, service is what you need to say to the client up front and in your upfront contract. Tell them what your business model. Our business model is for like PFF, where our business model provides you the best data that you could use. All right. The best quality data. Our business model was never to do it at the lowest, cheapest price. It's going to be an affordable price, but it's going to be the best quality, best service you're going to get. And they agree to that. Again, all this is done before presentation. Remember, the last step is presentation. If you wait until the presentation, or if you move up the presentation step, now you're just hoping and praying that you threw enough against the wall, benefits and features, and see with something that sticks. So the idea of a systematic approach is, remember, you're in control because you did the bon rapport. You understood who this person is. You understood what it is that they're looking for. You managed their expectations. You started up front talking about how this meeting's going to go. You got into the pain, reasons to do business. Then you got into the budget, what they're willing to spend time, money, and effort-wise to fix this problem. Can they make a decision to spend the money to fix the pain, to fulfill the terms of the contract because they like you? Because now think about it again. We're going from, again, left to right. Can they make a decision to spend the money, the time, and the effort it takes to fix the problem, to fulfill the upfront contract you had because they like you? Now you can do presentation. It's much better than doing bon rapport, then presentation. By the way, do you have any money? Because isn't that the way most sales is? Most sales is, oh, let me wow you with my benefits and features. Let me tell you how great everything is, and hope and pray that you're willing to spend the money it's going to cost. So that's the idea of following a systematic approach. You're in control. Now, you have to realize, everybody, there are some people who don't qualify. There are just some people that they want to become an edgy consumer. They were always going to buy from their brother-in-law. They are always going to stay with their current vendor, and they just want to go through the motions, and they want to know what you know, and they want it for free. So many times people are just going to try and stonewall you. They're just trying to get your free consulting. And that's where I come with that term, spill your candy in the lobby. They're going to try and get you to give all this free consulting away. And again, that's your choice. A lot of salespeople will take that choice and hope and pray that 6 months from now they call them back because they did what the client wanted. I choose not to spend my time. When I ask questions, I could be more successful if I could just, number 7 to that question is, and all the answers I received over 20 some years, is just have more time. I just choose not to spend my time with people who aren't qualified. That makes sense. And they're not qualified because I follow a systematic approach to find out if they have pain that I can fix and whether they're willing to spend the money and effort to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anybody else? All right. So here's what I hope you do for homework. I hope you go back and you take the sheet that I sent you, the feature, the benefit, the problem it solves, quick, right, easy, cheap, personalized, and then put every one of your feature and benefits into a question format. so that when you're having a pain conversation with somebody, you already have your template of questions. Are you concerned, worried, frustrated, bothered that you might work with a vendor who on the surface might be cheaper, but they don't have the knowledge to go out and do the permitting first? Or are you worried that although somebody might have a lower price, they don't fully understand other restrictions? Put your feature in a question format that gets the client to discover, yep, you are uniquely positioned to fix my problem compared to the competition. That it? Nobody else?
I guess I have some work to do on my website.
Why? Well, actually,
Well,
your
just
website
the
may be great.
features and
Just put
benefits and stuff, just trying to at least put some
it in a
questions
question
out
format.
there. So,
Yeah, put it in a question format. Well, you've actually done that. By the way, Janelle's designed my logo. She's done some brochures. You already did it in some of the brochures that we have. You put questions in there. Are you concerned? Remember, again, believe this. People buy emotionally. They validate logically later. So if you put your question with emotional words, concerned, frustrated, bothered, worried, they will go, oh, yeah, yeah, I get it. Instead of just pushing them in a direction, say, I have this feature and you should automatically assume that I'm a benefit to you. Put it in a question format. Try it and then call me and say, hey, Wayne, this is what I put together. What do you think of it? And we'll all have conversations about your product or service that way. Okay? All right. So I sent you the agenda for us for the rest of the year for the subject matter. So now you know which ones to skip or which ones to want to attend. But also, don't forget, I put them all up on the web. And again, when this converts over, I'll post it on the website, on my YouTube channel. You can go back and watch it. Okay. Thanks, folks. Call me if you need me.